Cool. Well, let me go ahead and just double check. Oh, yep, we've got 12:03 on my clock. And it looks like we've got people logged in. Hi. Hey, Brenton. We've got some familiar faces, familiar names here logged in. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So welcome everybody. My name is Karen Gordon. I'm the VP of Growth here at Goodshuffle Pro. And today I'm super jazzed to have Steve Clarke, who is the owner of Sperry Tents Hamptons. Welcome, Steve.
Thanks. Hi, everybody.
We were just chatting in the beginning of this, kind of talking about all of the different ways that Steve has been using Goodshuffle and all of the ways he's planning to continue to adopt new features and other features he hasn't quite explored. But today we're going to be covering first a little bit more just about the business in general. We're going to talk a bit about obviously this crazy past year we've had, what we're looking at for moving forward for Sperry Tents, and then advice for any of the smaller companies, newer companies, folks on this call who might be curious to sort of hear if you could go back in time, what might you have done differently? What did you do well? And then we'll wrap up at the end with my favorite topic, Goodshuffle, and talk a little bit about how you came to find us and things you are enjoying there. So to get us started first, it's sort of the question that everyone's asking. I'd be curious to hear what are some of the changes that you guys made operationally in 2020?
Yeah, so obviously 2020 impacted everybody in the event business very significantly. The main thing that happened with us, obviously, is we went to essentially not being able to host any events for the beginning of the season. And we had to dramatically reduce our staff. And we ended up really only producing 3 weddings that were booked prior to March 15th in 2020. The other 60 weddings we had on the books all moved to 2021. We ended up producing 50 to 60 micro weddings, we'll call them, less than 50 guests, because we weren't allowed to have more than 50 guests. And every single one of those inquiries came in between mid-June and the end of October. So we had to quickly pivot and essentially redesign a bunch of events and figure out how to produce events to meet the state guidelines. And we essentially ran with about a quarter of our regular production staff and essentially no office support. So we got lean and mean and stayed in business.
Wow. Well, were you changing the way that you were marketing the business? Were you doing anything to specifically target micro weddings, or was it more just sort of a scramble to adjust with the current business you already had in the pipeline?
Yeah, it was more survival mode, would be the best description, because we had no idea what we were going to be able to do through June and even into July. So it was very difficult to put out a marketing message, having no guidance and not understanding what we were going to be able to do. So we really, thankfully, were able to rely on our vertical network of vendors that work with us, caterers, event planners, and venues, to fill in the gaps and salvage part of the season.
And it sounds like you salvaged, some, but obviously just, on a smaller scale. Anything that you mentioned kind of being this lean and mean team, do you feel like any silver linings there, any positive things that you guys learned as a team that you're going to take moving forward?
Well, we had a lot of time to clean the warehouse in the beginning of the season. So we were actually able to retool the warehouse, get rid of a lot of stuff and change the workflow, which helped a lot. Just sort of bringing it back to Goodshuffle a little bit. The fact that I was able to work remotely all the time, and wherever I was, I could update a quote, email a quote, whether I had my iPhone or an iPad or my laptop at home or at my desk in the office. Being able to be mobile was huge.
That's great. Did you get to a lot of you mentioned obviously cleaning the warehouse. Were you sort of taking stock of the inventory and you entering any more of those details into your software by chance?
We removed things. We got rid of older inventory. We didn't have to add any more because we really didn't add any more, but we definitely lowered some numbers as we identified older canopies that still showed up in the system that we didn't need anymore. Usually what goes in and out are just simply tent canopies because, we've got so many poles and sides and everything else that we're less worried about inventory as it relates to all the small things because we have more than we need. We worry most about having canopies.
Got it. That makes sense. And then how has this kind of cleanup and everything impacted your goals for 2021? Are you, going to try and market some of the stuff that you do have, removing some of the things maybe from your website that you were getting rid of, or is
Yeah.
it impacting that at all? Are you going to try and continue to package micro weddings at all, or hoping that's just a thing of the past?
Well, it's interesting that you mention that because there is still a trend for smaller weddings because certain people are not as comfortable with a couple hundred people in their backyard, so they're still planning smaller events just for safety reasons.
Sure.
There's also still inconsistent guidance out of the state of New York as to what we're allowed to do right now. At venues, we can have 200 people under a tent, but in somebody's backyard, we can only have 25. So I actually, believe it or not, they rushed to get the guidance out to get the catering halls and indoor venues open, and left off professionally mannered off-premise catered events. So I actually earlier this morning was on a conference call with the New York State Department of Health to talk to them about the language that needed to get updated in the current COVID policy for opening up our industry, because we were sort of, the event business in New York was really left out.
Yeah, that's great that you were able to do that. Did you have an existing relationship with someone and you were able to kind of get that? I know a lot of people are saying that they're running into those frustrations of, like local guidelines being really generous to restaurants and not for events. Like, do you have a connection there or any advice for folks?
Yeah, so what we did here is a group of East End businesses impacted, caterers that do little events, caterers that do the over-the-top weddings, and myself. We have lobbied our local state assemblyman, and then he got a number of different correspondence from other local officials and one of our state representatives in Washington to send a note to the Department of Health and to the governor's office, and so it was a sort of a group lobbying effort. So many voices tend to be heard a little bit more as long as the message is clear. So it's just one of those things where there's unintended consequences of a policy that was put in place that, to no fault of their own, they didn't understand our industry as it relates to backyard events. They understood venues and they understood the commercial properties, but they weren't thinking the same thing went on in somebody's backyard. So they're very open to hearing our suggestions, and we even wrote them copy for the legislation so they can just cut and paste.
That's right.
Yeah.
We've seen that some here in the Washington, D.C. area. There was a local, the D.C. Live Events Coalition put together some stuff, and they actually got a great write-up in Washingtonian, which I thought was really impressive. They did a really nice job explaining the issue. I think, people sometimes hear like parties and think, well, do you need to do that? And they just did a great job of highlighting, look, if we feel comfortable with restaurants being at this capacity because there are standards in place, there's no reason that a professionally run event can't have the exact same standards. And
Right.
I thought that comparison really drew a lot of great attention and a lot more understanding in general.
Yeah. And the way we positioned it to the state was that three main things. One is when you have a licensed off-premise caterer that's getting obviously approvals from the local health department, and then you have local municipalities special event permit, and then you have a code enforcement with a tent permit. You're essentially creating a temporary venue in somebody's backyard. So that temporary venue is operating under the same guidelines as a commercial venue, because those licensed caterers by law have to follow the same policies that on-premise caterer has to follow. If not, they've got even bigger restrictions because of the refrigeration and food temperature issues and all of that. Food handling when you're in somebody's backyard has even stricter guidelines than an indoor kitchen has. So we made the case that since all these events are actually outside, they're safer. They're at double occupancy in the tents versus pre-COVID occupancy. So we went with the basic premise that, we can operate these events more safely than if they're in a hall, and we should be considered in that with the same. We should be able to operate under the same guidelines.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm glad to hear that's been successful. We were actually even having people chatting in up in Manitoba, Canada, having the same kind of lobbying. It seems like, obviously strength in numbers. And I know one of the things that kind of came out of last year was all these restaurant groups oftentimes have lobbying associations and have these pre-existing relationships. Did you kind of already have relationships with other local vendors that you think really help make it quicker to band together?
Yeah, I mean, I've been in business now. I think this is our 16th season coming up, and
Wow,
so most of these folks I've known for 15 years or more.
great.
And we all live and work here, so we know each other. So it was easy to put that together. But I think that the important thing is that whenever you're lobbying state or government offices, you need to put it in perspective on what's important to them.
Yes.
We're just one marketplace in a very large state, and by restricting or by guidance that negatively affects us, it really affects vendors from Buffalo to Montauk. It's not just about the East End of Long Island and the quote unquote Hamptons events. It's about the entire state. The dollars just happen to be different out here because we're doing, we've got more millionaires and billionaires, but somebody's 100-person backyard wedding in Rochester, New York is just as important to them and just as important to the caterer that's doing it and the tent company that's producing it as anything out here. So, it's thousands of businesses and tens of thousands of employees. And then we also wanted to break it down into the revenue lost to the state by restricting it. Because if you look at sales tax as an example, and I'm one example, if I have 30 weddings in May and June that can't happen, if you take the average wedding that we do out here, you're probably talking between $6 and $10 million in total revenue for the event, and between florists, catering, tents, makeup artists, bands, DJs, rental companies, the whole thing. So that's roughly $550,000 in sales tax, and I'm just one little tent company,
Wow.
or one medium-sized tent company. And then the other thing is that if you are not getting your employee taxes, and then on top of that, you have to continue to pay unemployment benefits because you haven't been able to hire your people back, then the states are accelerating their losses by not opening up. So they're going to lose sales tax, they're going to lose employee taxes, and then they're going to continue to pay out unemployment benefits. So it's in every municipality's best interest to legislate effectively with common sense approach that gets things open responsibly, not irresponsibly. So
Yeah, I mean, you said it perfectly that you need to put it in their terms because, just saying like, hey, my business is hurting, they're going to be hearing that from so many people.
yeah,
Unfortunately, this is very impactful. So just really putting out the numbers is what,
yeah,
someone in that position is going to hear. I think also it's very easy for people to assume that, restaurants are just so much bigger of an industry because partly just because I'm sure, especially some of these politicians maybe are eating out all the time. So they're seeing this right in front of them, but we don't all go, to a wedding every weekend. We don't all have a major event every weekend. So it's easy for folks to have that back of mind. I mean, we even encounter that being a software company for the events industry. I'll even describe to a friend what I do and they'll say, event rental, isn't that kind of niche? And it just
yeah,
makes me laugh because it's like, you only think that because you're only going to a few events per year, but think of how many events there are in total and think of all, like you said, the makeup artists and,
oh, yeah,
we cover florists, venues, DJs, event rental, decor, like they just, if you think about it and you get someone to, if you illustrate for that for somebody, they kind of quickly get it, but it's just not as top of mind as something as a restaurant where they may be frequenting every week.
right.
Well, what has this done for your 2021 plans? You mentioned that obviously things aren't, 100% normal. We're not going to turn on a switch. There's still going to be some smaller events and things like that. Have you tweaked some plans a little bit this year just to sort of get like a ramp up phase?
Yeah. So, we've fortunately, assuming the guidance gets adjusted in the next couple of weeks, which we expect it to, what's being held up right now are just people that literally called us last week that want to do something in May. We can't accept their order until we have updated guidance. So we're a little bit of a holding pattern for those last minute sales, which, we would love to have. But we had, we'd sold out June back by January because most of the half of the June events, if not more, had been moved from 2020. So we've got plenty of events to go produce, and assuming we're able to, we'll be right back on track. Where the summer's going to be a little different is a good part of our business out here. We're big charity galas, St. Jude, Nature Conservancy, VH1 Save the Music, things like that. And those probably aren't going to happen this year. In fact, most of them aren't going to happen. So where we're going to pivot is we added a lot of inventory for a lot more smaller events. People are not going to be as comfortable going to restaurants. In the market out here, people like to entertain their friends at their house every year or every couple of years, and they weren't able to do it last year. So we're hearing there's a lot of pent-up demand for more intimate backyard parties, 25 to 75 people. So we've added more inventory to cover those smaller events. And then the other thing is we've come up with some other products that people can use. Because let's be honest, not everybody wants to have a tent. They'd like to have an outdoor party, but they'd love to do it without a tent if they can. So we've actually designed a new system. I don't have any photos of it yet because the weather just cleared here. We're going to be setting it up next week. We designed triangle sail shades suspended by varnished wooden poles that can be installed in somebody's backyard to create a shade environment, or let's just call it a fair weather event space. And then we give them a tent as a rain backup. So they plan their parties if they're dining outdoors, and then they have a tent on rain reserve that they can use if the forecast shows that they need a tent. So on Friday we show up and we either set up one or the other, depending on the weather forecast.
Wow, that is brilliant. I love that. I feel like that is going to be extremely popular for exactly what you're describing. These, so many backyard events that are, I know, on a personal note, my friends are all talking about trying to create any kind of event now because we've, missed each other. And if they're going to be smaller, I think also people doing smaller events probably have a little more budget right now, right? They're saying like, I didn't spend much money this last year, maybe because I didn't go out as much. Of course, a lot of people are feeling the opposite and feeling the hurt of the last year, but hopefully for events that they'd already planned or put budget aside for, they may say less people, but nicer tent or nicer decor. Are you adding other things outside of tents? Are you kind of finding you're doing a little bit more of the smaller stuff that wouldn't have normally been a focus?
Yeah, so we're going to use the time this summer without doing the big galas and those large setups. We're going to use that time to train and develop staff on attention to detail. Because it's really important when you're doing a large event that you have employees that really understand all the finer things to make it look perfect and you put your best foot forward. So obviously we're not expecting all of our staff that we lost from 2020 to come back. So it's an opportunity to bring in new blood, and training this season is going to be really important. And then September is chock full of weddings, new and old from 2020. And the standards are going to be very, very high for those events. So we need June and July as a training period so that we're putting our best foot forward when the biggest part of the season hits us.
I love that. I love hearing people thinking like the long game, right? Of how can I use the extra time to be efficient, right? Not just, okay, I'm going to have a little extra time to chill, but sort of what am I going to use this extra time that will mean much more efficiency down the line? Yeah. For folks who have a smaller staff, would you recommend the same kind of goal of using the time for training? Are there other goals that you would recommend for smaller teams?
Look, at the end of the day, everybody on the call, if they're a tent company, you're only as good as your last event. And for most of us, failure is really not an option. We cannot not show up for somebody's wedding and not complete the job. So we can all purchase tents and trucks and gear, but quality employees are the most difficult thing to find. So being able to hire, train, and keep good employees is the number one thing for growth, because without those employees, you simply can't grow. We ran into a huge labor crunch in 2018, and found ourselves in June without enough help and not enough skilled help to carry out what we were doing. And we ended up working harder than we've ever worked because we were doing more with the same or more with less. So being staffed well with good people is really, really important. It's also important from a safety perspective. So whenever you're putting up a tent on a windy day in particular, having enough staff is really the key to the tent going up safely and everybody staying safe. And sometimes, 2 plus 2 isn't 4, it's actually 5. Having one extra guy sometimes, or one extra person on staff, does make the day go faster. So that's where I go. That's where I am with them.
Well, we have been putting together a whole new guide for our website about starting off if you're a newbie starting an event rental company, whether that's tents or other areas. And one of the things we've been working on is gathering kind of from other people, how do you find great employees? How do you keep great employees? And we certainly have a lot of opinions based off of our experience here at Goodshuffle Pro. Our employees are a huge part of what we do is hiring the right people and training them and keeping a company culture that they want to stay. But I'm curious, obviously every industry is a little different. What do you have any thoughts on where to find them and how to make sure you keep people happy and keep them?
Yeah, I think it's well, first of all, you got to identify the type of person you want on your team. We have a sort of core operating principle as it relates to staff, which is we only want good people. And by that, we mean people that are good people, good to each other, good to other people that they meet. And we were willing to train on skills because you can always learn a new skill, but you can't take somebody that's a complete jerk and turn them into a good person. Yep. So bad behavior, bigoted behavior, anything like that is simply not tolerated. So we always want to start off with people that are just good humans and then help them learn the skills that will help them develop their careers. So we're also, this year, for instance, we're going to a bunch of schools, high schools in particular. We're looking for kids that maybe want a different career path. They might not be going to college, or they're thinking about community college, but they just don't know. And if we can give them a great environment that allows them to work 6 months a year and maybe just do 1 semester of school in the spring and then, not have to incur debt because they worked for 7 months and earn good money, then, giving people an alternate path, career path that we're finding can be effective. So we're just going to broaden our net and hopefully we'll catch some good folks.
I love that. I like how you're thinking very much related to what's in it for them. I always say that's a really key part of finding great employees is think what would make somebody really interested in this, who would be a really good fit. So for example, somebody who's trying to figure out school that's hard to pay for, and this provides them that flexibility to kind of do the work in the semester. I think thinking about what it's in it for the employee instead of just us as the employers first is a great way to actually think more about, finding the right people instead of just like, I don't know, it's a job and here's the pay, that could just get too wide of a net. And so thinking through like, this would be a person who would be very interested in this job because they have a unique need.
Yeah.
What are some of the changes that you've made, not just this past year, but historically in you said 17 years, is that right?
16. This is 16 to 16.
16 years. What would you say are some of the changes that have made the biggest ROI? Obviously, bottom line being important here.
I really think investment in staff. We have a much deeper office staff now, and we added. I used to really wear all the hats. We added a general manager in the warehouse that runs all production, and I think the other thing, and not necessarily changes, but I think things that reinforce that we were doing the right things is we look at the business as what can we produce efficiently and successfully versus I want to get every single job. Because at the end of the day, if you take one job too many on a busy weekend, that could be one bride too many that didn't have a good experience. So really recognizing and planning for growth diligently so that you know that you can take on that extra work each year and grow your business. But if you don't have the staff, you can't do it. You can always, again, buy equipment, software, trucks, but you can't just write a check for skilled tent installers. So you have to develop a staff, and then based on that staff, you then can grow your business to accomplish more. So, sometimes it's the changes are really just about refocusing on what you need to do.
Yeah, I love that you're talking about also focusing on what you do well. I'm actually in one of the talks I'm doing at the special event, the conference this summer I'm be speaking at, I'm going to be talking about this notion that some people try to do too much. They try to be everything to everyone, and that's just, a recipe for failure. And I talk to people all the time about things like their website. They say, well, I kind of want to, gear towards these brides, but I also want to do these types of events. And it's fine to be doing lots of different types of events, but you need to figure out what your unique value proposition is. What is it that people are coming to you for? And just emphasize that at its core. It may be that we have the most well-trained staff around. You're going to have safety guaranteed. You're going to have everything set up properly. And if that's your thing, make that your thing. But I think people try to be too many things. And so it's just too much. No one can observe that. They need to remember really what am I getting with this one brand?
Right.
And then what about, in terms of letting go? You talked about hiring office staff, things like that. I think another thing we see from a lot of entrepreneurs, I've experienced this myself, is that notion of letting go and letting other people run parts of the business. Is that something that you can give any advice on?
Yeah, well, that's a work in progress for me, to put it bluntly. But luckily I have the people, Megan and Donnie, who are listening in, that have the skills and if assuming I can let go of everything, I actually do have the people in place to do it. It's just something I have to learn how to do. So I was a micromanager for years, so I have to untrain myself, and let more people do more things. But a really good example of that is 2 years ago, I was heading on vacation, and our current web-based software at the time was not functioning, and it was not good. And a company had bought the company, and we were supposed to migrate over to new software. And I just left and said, "Hey guys, take care of this. Try to figure it out while I'm gone." And I came back from vacation, and Donnie said, "Steve, the fact is this software is awful. We don't want to use it. And by the way, I've solved the problem. I found this company, Goodshuffle, and they've got this great product, and we think you should use it." And so that's a good example of stepping back into the office and finding things were running without me.
Well, and it's a great example of why you hire the right people. Somebody that proactive who knew that just saying the software was awful wasn't going to do anything, that he needed to come with a solution in hand. I mean, that's the kind of employee that allows you to let things go, right?
Yeah, exactly. Problem solvers.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, the solution-oriented thing is sort of what I live and breathe. I don't really care to hear a problem without a suggested solution afterwards.
Yeah.
And then how did obviously, so you come into this office and you've got, your team ready to say Goodshuffle, and we've seen it go both ways. We've seen people who come and say, look, my boss doesn't know I'm on this software demo, but I hate our software, but he or she is just, attached to it, has a, just can't accept change. And sometimes that turns out well, like it did with you. Sometimes the owner's never going to get on board. They're the owner, you're never going to be able to, sell them if you don't sell them properly. We usually say, oh, can you bring that person to the demo so we can talk to them too? It's not going to be great if you're doing this behind their back. Right. But what do you think it was that they did that really sold you?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know if it was any one thing, but we had certain criteria that were important to us. And the old software we were using worked, but it wasn't ideal, and we dealt with it because none of the look. We went after and looked at all of the big players out there having server-based software that was ridiculously expensive and had just frankly too many functions and too many options and was too complicated even for me to figure out. Having a little bit of a tech background, I went, "Oh, this is crazy, and the investment doesn't justify it." So we had a web-based service that was okay, but it had its quirks. And the other comment I think I made to you guys years ago was that your software platform took a business challenge and then attached technology to solve the business challenge. So many people have the idea of developing software, and the developer side comes up with everything they think is important, and it turns out from a business perspective it's not important. So if you have a business oriented development team that is solving specific business problems with the code on the back end, then that's engineered the right way. If it's oh, by the way, it can do this, well, who cares? We don't need it to do that. So as soon as I looked at the demo of what you guys were doing and looked at the user interface and saw a lot of the flexibility that was in the software and also the reporting aspects of it, for us, calendar and inventory tracking is really important. The presentation of the quotes, as you know, from what we went through in the beginning, was very important to us, because it's what the customer sees. We didn't want everybody seeing the same thing. More importantly, you guys were responsive to solving any challenges we had and educating us for how best to take advantage of it. So we felt like we got good support too, which we weren't getting on the other side. So it wasn't a tough sell for me. And at the end of the day, everybody on the team's got to use it. So if I'm the one guy that's saying I don't like it, well, I'm kind of, not that it's a democracy, but I got overruled. But I didn't have to be overruled, but I would have accepted that overrule because I don't want to be the one roadblock to everybody else being successful.
I love that. I think that's the best, view for an owner to take. I love that you said very business oriented, solutions. It makes me feel really proud. I love that our team, people say to us all the time, how did you guys do this? This is literally solving things that I never thought would be solved by a software. And particularly when we run into companies that maybe don't quite fit the mold, right? They're not quite a rental company. They sort of, they have an in-house warehouse where they were creating unique designs, and they were kind of more in the design agency. Like you get some people who are a little bit like on the cusp of being really event rental, and they're blown away that it can customize to their business. Tents is one that it's like we have to convince people like, no, we actually will track down to every single pole and sidewall and show you that you can actually swap them in and out. Sometimes it blows my mind that there's other programs out there that don't, you build a package and you're stuck with it forever. You're not able to just swap something or change a price or change a name because the client's going to want to see, oh, my wedding tent as opposed to, 10 by 4 or whatever. So it's been really rewarding to hear that feedback, because we spend a lot of time with the design, and we don't just sort of pop open a feature and hope it's going to solve band-aid solution. It's really important that you actually know your clients and listen to your clients and get to understand the root of the problem, as opposed to just slapping things in, because then you get that Bride of Frankenstein software you're describing, where it's like there's so many things to click, I don't even know where to start.
Right.
Well, what's your favorite feature? I know we talked at the beginning of this about some features that I'm going to be nudging you to adopt in addition to what you're currently using. But I know you mentioned the Google Calendar integration. What are some of your favorite features that you do love?
The Google Calendar for me is the best tool, because I love to be able to look at the calendar, see what my production schedule is, and by moving the cursor over a particular event, it gives me that quick highlight of what it is. And it always pops up for me, the key big things, which is always tent, flooring, and lights. And if I see that, this is a huge event, I don't even need to look at the price. I just know based on what the first 4 items that it's a larger event, and I can say, oh, okay, this week's looking really crazy because of this. I love the fact I can go right to the order and either look at it, print it, change it. I don't even have to have Goodshuffle open. I just can be looking at the calendar, and then it also shows me what's not booked. So I think it's the most important. I mean, we're a sales and marketing company. We just happen to put up tents. Everybody in business is a sales and marketing company, whether they want to believe it or not. They just have a product or service that they offer, but we're all in a sales and marketing company. So being able to look at your calendar of events that are not booked and go, oh, I need to follow up on that because I need to close out that weekend, is for me the most important thing.
I love that. I hear all the time people getting a little bit, I call it the shiny ball syndrome, right? They maybe looked at a software that had some random feature that looked cool. But one of the things I say you should be in your list of priorities when you have this, checklist as you're shopping around the first things you should be thinking about is the sales and marketing, right? You should be thinking about what's going to get me more business. Like what is going to get a client gets this beautiful quote and they can scroll through photos and they can approve, sign, and pay all online. Over half of our quotes sent through our system are signed and paid within 5 minutes because it's so seamless on the client side that they just do it immediately. And so, things like automated billing reminders, the website integration, things that we talk about a lot, it's because at the end of the day, everyone's trying to get more sales. Like, yeah, it's like, oh, we've had these demos where someone will say, will it track my inventory? And we're, oh gosh, we forgot to mention the most important thing, but we just get so excited about getting them more business because obviously that's key.
Yeah, in my opinion, tracking inventory is just something that should happen. It's of course, but it needs to do all the other things because again, you won't have any inventory to sell if you don't have sales. You won't need to buy any inventory if you can't book an order. So
I think what scares me is that people are asking it because they are using an inventory system that doesn't properly track their inventory. And that
no, I know. I was one of those people. For sure. So
it's frightening to me. I'll talk to somebody who says, oh, I like this feature, but I always have to go out and double check and do a count. And it's just like, what? I don't know. It feels like I can't even think. It's like getting a car with like a great sunroof that doesn't drive. Cool, right. I guess.
Yeah, looks good.
Yeah. Well, I want to make sure that we leave some time for other folks to ask questions. I've been asking all the questions so far. If anyone has any questions for Steve about, Sperry Tents, about their business, what they've been doing in this past year, what they're going to be doing in the future, or about Goodshuffle Pro itself, please feel free to go ahead and drop those in the Q&A or in the chat, and we will go through those now. And while people are going and typing that, I do want to, again, thank you, Steve, for the time. This is so wonderful. We love chatting with our users and loved seeing all the enthusiasm on social media when we were posting about this. So thank you for that. We have a question here. Do you guys take your own marketing photos or do you collect them from photographers?
Yeah, good question, Brenton. So we do both. We have not done as good a job taking our own photos as we plan to do moving forward, especially as it relates to specific things we want to have in our catalog. But we get a lot of great photos from professional photographers that we've used both on our website and our marketing, and then also just to share with clients. So the best photos we have were taken years ago by my brother-in-law, who's a photographer, and more recently from the professional photographers that we have. But this season, as another example of what we're going to be doing a little differently, is Megan's going to go out and take more photos. We've also found a young local kid who's got a degree in photography and is in school right now, art school right now, who wants to help us out. And we're going to make sure employees have better iPhones so that the new iPhone Pro 12, whatever it is, takes really amazing pictures. So the more we have out there, the more we can have. Yeah.
Very nice. Yeah, we need to get some better pictures ourselves. So I'm taking notes over here as well. That has been something we would like to see more of on our end is, as a software company, we're not always out at events, but we need event pictures for our marketing. So definitely on my radar. Can you talk a little bit about your competitor pricing coming out of COVID? Is that an issue for you at all?
It's really not. I mean, we didn't see this as an opportunity to change prices one way or the other. Obviously, if your business is off dramatically, it's very difficult to lower prices because then you're really shooting yourself in the foot because your tent businesses aren't tremendously profitable anyway. So there's not a huge margin for which to go down, and employee costs are going to go up because we might be producing events with only our longest term employees and therefore most expensive employees. The other thing is that with current COVID occupancy rates of 50%, almost every event is in a slightly larger tent anyway. We're finding that typically the tent's 25% bigger now. It used to have more gracious space in it. And now with COVID occupancy, we have to double the size, or double the occupancy. So we take what normally would be in a 5,000 square foot tent. We now have to put them in a 6,000 square foot tent. So automatically our average ticket's going up because of that.
Right. That makes sense. I mean, you can only discount so much. Can you tell us, we've got a question here about how are you incorporating the fulfillment feature in Goodshuffle Pro? I'm guessing what the question might be is a little bit more about, are you using digital pull sheets yet? Are you using more of the printed pull sheets still?
Yeah. So we basically we're old school and new school. So our warehouse manager will walk around with a tablet and have the digital pull sheet on there or notes that he's taking. But usually the crew chief that's packing the order's got a paper clip, a clipboard, and on that clipboard is a front page or two of the invoice, the copy of the packing sheet, and the site plan of where the tent's going and where all the auxiliary tents are being placed. They'll have a diagram for how to build flooring or the dance floor associated with that event. So we give those guys all a paper copy. And then we use the tech side of it as backup if they need it. We haven't.
So you also have those files in the files tab of the project, or you have them both printed and in the files tab, or are you mostly using printing for that?
Donnie, did you hear that? Nice.
I swear this question wasn't a plant. I didn't plant this question.
That was Donnie's big thing in our last meeting was that I in particular have to update my customers with the site plans and all the data, all the photos and everything that needs to be in there, because I'm the one that breaks that rule because, I need to train myself better. Let's just put it that way. So
have it, yeah.
Yeah, they're all in there. They all should be in there. And it's on us, the sales and marketing side of the office to make sure we do our job. So yeah.
I love it. Well, that's a great segue to the next question, which is, where did you get the layout planner, the CAD program that you're using for the images on your website?
Yeah, so we use an old CAD program called TurboCAD. It's real basic, and we put all our tent shapes in it and sort of have templates for every tent shape for 3 or 4 different dinner configurations and cocktail configurations. So we drop the Google Earth image onto that CAD program and scale it, and then drop the tents and tables and cocktail area, ceremony area, bathroom trailer placement, generator placement, everything we need to address on the site plan gets dropped on that, and then those get saved both on our network and in the Goodshuffle. So we just save the PDF version that the client would see in Goodshuffle, and then we keep the background software going.
Got it. Makes sense. Question here about damage waivers. Open, just how do you feel about them?
I've only sent one damage waiver to a client once. And we typically never even deal with that. It's something that I've kept thinking about, but yeah, it's only been asked for once or twice, even though it mentions it in our contract. We've actually only had them filled out twice. So I'd love to learn more about how to implement damage waivers, and if it's something we should be doing more often. It's certainly something I'm not that knowledgeable about.
Yeah, we see quite a wide variety amongst our users, whether or not they use damage waivers, how they do them. I would say, I actually should double check on this, but I would say the majority don't. But I should double check before I say that definitively. I mean, it's certainly a mixed bag, that's for sure. We have somebody here asking about a deposit. So do you keep a deposit for a backup rain tent when someone has a fair weather setup?
Yeah, we do. Any piece of inventory that you would like to have available to use a 50% deposit, it's non-refundable, and then we only pay us the balance if we show up to install it.
Okay. What about, we've got someone here who is asking specifically about these fair weather sales.
Yeah, I have let me see if I can pull up a picture that you could share. I did a test setting up shades on a tent. So can I share my screen real quick?
Yep. You should now have the option with a green button in the bottom that says share screen.
Share screen. Okay. Got it. Can you guys see this image?
Yep, that looks great.
Okay, so
very cool.
What we did is we actually took one of our tents and then attached triangle sail shades, it's a tongue twister, to it, and then tensioned them off of a taller support pole. So you can't see it. Maybe I can, so this is what it looks like. Underneath it a little bit more. This is what it looks like from inside the tent, looking out.
Wow.
And then this is a cross view. I'll see if I can make it bigger. So these are the shades here to the left, and they're anchored with regular tent stakes. And this was just a template. This is my mom's backyard. So we were playing with a tent shape and throwing sail shades on it to see what it would look like. And after this, we've come up with a system where we can use our varnished wooden poles, and then we're installing rigging on them with pulleys. So we just anchor them and then use pulleys and little cleats to make it look nautical and stretch them out, and away you go. So we've done configurations now for dinners for 60 and 80. And I'll see if I can, let me see if I can pull up, pull up a layout.
I mean, the easiest thing to do is search the project in Goodshuffle.
Oh, I know. I haven't even put this in as a package yet, though. So can you guys see this?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So that's an example of the six support poles, 4 shades, and the tension lines going out to support them. So yeah. Once I set this up next week, I have the shades. They just came in. I'm putting the poles together next week, and then we're going to go set them up in my mom's yard again. Then we'll take some photos, and then we'll put the kits into Goodshuffle.
Perfect. The next step. I've got a couple more questions here. Tiana, I see your question, but I'm going to save it for the end because it might be a good heated debate between Steve and I. So I'll start with Jamie's question first, which is, how many days prior to your event do you require final numbers? And has this changed due to all these restrictions?
We don't require final numbers because typically we're not supplying tables and chairs. So we're only doing the tents, and we just do tents, floor, lighting, power, and that's it. So we typically, unless something dramatic happens with the event, we're not making very many changes to the order. We might just be adding extra lighting elements or extra little auxiliary tents for a green room or something like that if somebody needs it.
And somebody else had asked, how do you handle last minute change requests? It sounds like that's just not very common, or is there something that you have a policy for?
It is. If essentially if the trucks are already loaded and we're already on the way, then there's going to be a separate delivery fee and installation fee. As long as they get to us before we've loaded the trucks, we're happy to sell them more stuff.
Yeah, great. This is the question that I was waiting for from Tiana. Is there a specific business reason to have clients request a quote as opposed to listing pricing on the website?
Very good question. So the first part of this, now not that a competitor can't find out our pricing, but we really don't want to advertise everything that we have and price-wise. The second thing is that but more importantly, I view the sales process as a consultation more than a individual line item transaction. So our mission is to meet with you or Zoom call or phone and really understand the flow of the event and everything that could be required to producing an event that client would want. Whether it's a planner or an end user that's buying from us, we're trying to help them design an event that's going to work best for what they're trying to do and help them avoid the pitfalls associated with making bad decisions. So every order that we do is probably different. Of the 500 orders I've put through Goodshuffle, I doubt there's any 2 identical orders because everybody gets something a little bit different. So we're going to do a real custom quote for every client. Now the pieces may all be the same and they're all the same in there, but their configuration, how they go. I mean, yeah, you're going to have the 2040 tent with the bistro lights, and that's going to look the same as the other, but it may have a more challenging load in. They might need a little generator. They might want a small dance floor. So, um, if you have somebody pop on your website and pick out a tent that's too big and a dance floor that's too small, um, then then you're going back and fixing things as opposed to really consulting them through how to manage their event. And I would also say that self serve makes you more of a commodity than customization and consultation.
So this is a very great topic that I was just talking about this morning. It's something that I've done several talks about. I've actually spoken at several events about this, done a lot of research on it about transparency and pricing and how the modern consumer is very turned off by not having transparent pricing. You can see bounce rates on websites. If they can't find a price right away, they're going to go to a competitor because folks now are shopping on their phones. So if they're shopping at 3 a.m, they want to have a sense of what they're looking at. They want to, take that action right away. So they want to be able to submit something and know that it's roughly within their price range. So one great thing about our website wishlist integration is it does have customization. You can turn off pricing if you want and not show it to the client. So they could just select what they want and at least starts the quote process. You're still getting that lead. Mm-hmm. But I discourage it all the time when I talk to folks when they're implementing the wish list and they ask about these customizations and they say, a lot of them specifically for tents say, can I turn off the pricing just for the tents? I say, yes, you can, and I'll show you how to do it. But I'm going to go ahead and give you a little bit of my spiel, my lecture. I'm sorry, because it is something I'm so deeply passionate about. There are even studies that show that people now even want to see cost transparency. It also is going to prevent you from getting a bunch of unqualified leads, particularly with our website integration. People see their leads go up so quickly. We just had someone the other day who installed our website integration, and he said within 2 hours, he got his first request. He said it kind of broke his heart to think about all the people who've probably come to his website and bounced off, to know that immediately someone was submitting this request because people like that engagement. But we just, we want to make sure that you don't get a bunch of those that are from high school kids who are never going to be able to afford your tents, right? You want to make sure that there's some price anchoring there. So, I think there's a lot of opportunity to say all listed prices are starting points. Please understand pricing depends on location, delivery, and many other factors. So, again, we have the ability to turn it off with our website integration, so you can still maximize how awesome that is for bringing in more leads, for freeing up some of your salespeople's time to do bigger sales. And it is very consultative. It's not an Amazon checkout, right? It comes into Goodshuffle. You're still probably picking up the phone, having all the conversations you're describing. It's just freeing up their time because it's doing half the work for them and making it a great experience for the client. But I am such a big believer in transparency and pricing. I've seen the bounce rates, and it's a little tragic, and a lot of it is a little bit generational, I think. But I do think you see with the Gen Zs, they just don't have the patience for it. I think they just bounce right off your website.
Yeah, no, I get it. And it's certainly, again, I have to be open to making those adjustments. And I think sometimes business owners believe that, they've got integrity, so they're not worried about, not transparent pricing because, if you get 2 quotes from us, they're going to be pretty much identical, regardless of who you call in the office. I guess the challenge is recognizing, to your point, that the next generation of market is going to view it differently than I would view it.
Yeah, I think for a lot of them, it's seen as a respect for their time, that oh, this is going to be much faster rather than I have to pick up a phone and call and have this conversation. I just want to know off the bat, am I in the range of what I can do? And then from there, you call them and have all those conversations. The reason it was coming up this morning is I got a sneak peek of this month's Intense magazine. Are you a subscriber to Intense, or do you ever check their stuff out?
Yep.
They've got a software article coming out. So spoiler alert, we actually have one of our clients is quoted in it. And it brought so much joy. I was genuinely near tears because he was very opposed to the wish list for all the reasons you're saying. He said, we take a lot of pride that we even have an event planner on staff. We work with our brides very closely. I don't want it to feel like this commodity. And he decided to give it a go a couple months back. And the fact that they reached out to him and he quoted specifically talking about how he loved the wish list. And I was very excited about it. Very, very proud moment for me. So, I think everyone can sort of do that however they see fit, but I'm a big believer in starting off those conversations that way. And I think it's really helpful. Talking about communication, we do have somebody asking, do you have a logistics person who takes over the client communication? So after sales is confirmed and finish the consultation process, do you have someone on the crew that's taking over the communication, or does the salesperson stay the lead?
So it's just a combination. As you can see, our office is pretty wide open. We just have another two big rooms essentially. So we pretty much are all talking to each other all the time. The process that we go through is one of the three team members involved in sales. Once the order gets booked, then Megan takes over at that point, processes the payment, interacts with the client to send a receipt of the payment, and then schedules all the permitting and make sure that all that's followed through on. And then we communicate prior to the week of the installation with do's and don'ts for that, and reminding them that they got to settle up with us before we come out.
Got it. And has any of this process or your deposit process changed via COVID, via cancellation? Someone's asking about, these canceled events. Do you give their deposit back? Have you kind of changed things about reschedules?
Right. So we haven't been charging for rebookings. We have basically, we move somebody from one event to another for no extra fee, subject to availability. If you want to move your June event today to September, we don't have availability. But we had to last year put basically a COVID policy that says if your event date's you can no longer produce your event as intended due to COVID restrictions, we'll move your date at no charge as long as we have availability to produce your event on your new date. And having that flexibility was really important to people because everybody's been hurting from it. Right. But what event companies couldn't do obviously is issue millions of refunds. So I think out of all of the events we did, we only had 2 events that actually just canceled and walked away from deposits. Everything else moved.
Wow, that's great. I mean, that's only 2 cancellations is great. Are you finding anyone moving to weekday weddings? I know everyone was kind of hoping that they wouldn't just, clog up Saturdays the following year. Are you seeing people be more flexible, creative?
Only as it relates to 9/10 versus 9/11. A lot of people, especially in the New York area, didn't want to get married on 9/11. So 9/10 is one of the September dates that's, becoming popular.
Interesting. Very interesting. That makes sense. Okay. I think that's it for our questions. Were there any other questions from our attendees? Thank you, attendees, for really, really great questions. These are very insightful questions. Love hearing from the crew here. Steve, thank you so much again for your time. Thank you so much for sharing with us. It's just been a joy as always. Someone does want to get a confirmation that Meg is alive back there, that little wave or something. Someone asked if that she's real. Yeah. I thought it may be a cardboard cutout or something, but thank you both for joining us today.
Sure.
It's so great for people. 16 years in an industry like this is no joke. I think there's so much for people to learn from you. So we really appreciate you sharing that knowledge.
Yeah, Karen, thanks so much, and keep going. We're excited to be a partner with you guys, and love the software. So our next conversation will be how I can move into the 21st century and add some more features that old Steve might be resistant to, but new Steve needs to pay attention to. So thank you.
I'll go easy. I get very excited talking about things like putting things on websites because I talk about it all day. But don't let my excitement fool you. I won't bully you about it. I'll be nice.
All right.
Cool. Well, thanks again for your time, and thanks again to all our attendees. We appreciate it. If you have any other questions for Steve, he's at SperryTentsHamptons.com. And as always, follow Goodshuffle on our social media. We've been doing all sorts of fun questions and contests recently. So a little plug there for our Instagram as well. And thanks again, team, for being here.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Email me if you need help with anything. See ya.
Love it. Thanks.